Basketball, boxing, the church, and school. They would probably represent the four pillars of your life growing up as a youngster. Tell us about the role those four things played in young Oscar's life: basketball, boxing, the church, and school.
Starting with basketball, because my brother played at Crispus Attucks, where I went on to play, and they got into the state in 1951 for the first time. As a matter of fact, he had a shot against a team called Anderson, Indiana, the Anderson Indians, that propelled Attucks to get into the state for the first time for a black team, and that was encouraging. Boxing, I used to love Friday night fights, man. Kid Gavilan, Sugar Ray Robinson, and man, those guys, and Joe Louis, of course. It gave you something to look forward to. Going back to basketball, another tremendous part of my life in basketball, Globetrotters. I thought the Globetrotters were the greatest of anything.
And they were, Abe Saperstein founded that team right there in Indianapolis, didn't he?
Evidently, he founded something, but I tell you what, for him to do that was the greatest thing in the world for not only myself, but other blacks as well. Then the boxing, as I said, Kid Gavilan, Sugar Ray Robinson, Joe Louis, and Chuck Davy, and all those guys, man. And Kid, and what a Kid Gavilan too.
Yeah. Had a bolo punch.
Kid Gavilan. I mean, and they had a great fight night. Pabst Blue Ribbon Friday night fights on top.
They ring the bell.
Yeah. What do you have? Pabst Blue Ribbon.
Yeah.
Pabst Blue Ribbon beer, and it was great.
Yeah.
And the church, as I go into the church, my mother was very religious. As a matter of fact, when you live in the South, you go to church all day Sunday. You know what I mean, it's not like it is in the city where you pick a time. But here with my mother, she sang church songs and she went to church all the time. So during the week when I would go to school, I'd play basketball in the evenings, and I'd go to church.
Well, and during that time, Oscar, there was a place that to this day is legendary in Indianapolis, and they called it the Dust Bowl.
Yes.
Tell us what was the Dust Bowl, and what role did it play in Oscar's life?
Actually, it was a hardwood court. I mean, hard court, not hardwood, but a asphalt type court. The reason the Dust Bowl came into it because where I lived on Colton Street, they pushed this house down. And when they pushed the house down, what the guys do, we put a basket up and we played on it. It got so dusty, we call that a Dust Bowl. And because most of the guys who played a lot of great basketball lived on Colton Street. And so we just took that name on to the Lockfield Dust Bowl when they started having those tournaments and whatnot. But it was not dust at all on the actual place where we played, which was in Lockfield Garden, which was a housing complex for black people in that time in Indianapolis.
But all the great black players that came through Indianapolis played in what was affectionately called the Dust Bowl.
Not only blacks, but all the whites came there and played eventually. At first they didn't come, but when we had the Dust Bowl tournament, a lot of white teams came down there to play, and there was no trouble. As a matter of fact, I think the Twins, Van Arsdale played a lot of ball there, and I think that it was a great opportunity for people to get to know each other because I used to travel on the east side. The east side was a real tough neighborhood to go into, but because I played basketball, they didn't bother me.
Yeah.
I'd go and play ball and travel back and forth. And Lockfield was the center of basketball in Indianapolis during those days, no doubt about it.
And it was a tradition, as I think you mentioned earlier. In the summertime, Mama packed the boys up and sent you back to Nashville to be there during the summer with the relatives and work on the farm. And you baled hay and milked cows and picked tobacco. Tell us about what those summers must have been like for you. Well, people today probably couldn't picture Oscar milking a cow.
No, I mean, I wasn't very good at milking a cow, but summers were fun. You got up early in the morning, about 4:30. You went down, you fed your animals, came and washed up, and came back to eat. And the breakfast was something different than it is today. Today you eat a couple of eggs and a piece of toast. Breakfast there might have been a fried chicken, fried potatoes, fried corn, biscuits. You'd have some kind of some sorghum molasses. It was a breakfast because you were going to work all day long. And you'd get up and you get your breakfast, and then you'd go down to the barn and get your animals ready, and you trip down to the fields, which may have been taking about 2 or 3 miles. You'd go down to the bottomlands, and you had a sandwich at lunch. You worked in the fields. I mean, some of those fields was just amazing. when I used to see the white guys before I started baling hay especially on a wagon or either a truck with a moving like 5 miles an hour, I wonder why they always take their shirt off. Now I know the reason why, because man, you get that bale hay into your shirt and it's hot, 100 and some degrees, it just wears you out. So here I am out there, so I got a good suntan. Shirt off, man, and I was like 13 or 14. I got some size on me, so when you get size in the country, they think you're a grown man. And I'll tell you, those bales of hay were heavy as can be, putting them up on that wagon. See, the machine would throw them on the wagon, then you'd have to stack them. And also with corn, pulling corn all day long, and then you had to thin it out. So my grandfather, I should say, with my 3 brothers, we'd get in this big field of corn. I don't know how we ever got it done. To be honest, I don't know how we got it done, but we thinned all the corn out and made it grow better.
So you at the early age, 12, 13 years old, you had your first lessons on what hard work was all about.
Didn't know anything different.
Didn't know the difference.
I thought everyone did that, so you didn't know it was hard work, but you know that you go out the field, you didn't complain, you just put your hat on and shirt on, you started working, and then you got to know all the snakes and all the places where you shouldn't go, so you can stay alive. I mean, but you learn these things in life, I mean, that certain smells of things that you stay away from, certain things that are so colorful that were poison for you. Those kind of things. Where to get cool water. As a matter of fact, during the lunchtime, you just take the bridle off the horse's neck and they go to the water hole themselves. It's an amazing thing what you learn, what you see around you if you just stop and look sometimes.
About life and nature.
Like right now, George, when I'm at home and the weather's about to change, I watch the squirrels. And people are going to laugh at this, which is quite all right. Go ahead and laugh. But when the squirrels are out getting nuts and whatnot, running around, it's not going to get cold soon. When you don't see them for about 2 or 3 days, look out.
So you learn a lot of valuable lessons out there in the natural elements of life, and learn how to interpret the natural elements of life.
Well, that's true, and I think it's really, though, this is what animals do.
How they survive
in the jungles and whatnot. They teach their offsprings how to stay alive. But I think sometimes we as adults, we forget these things because we assume certain things are going to happen, like education. My father said, "Boy, if you don't go to study, you're not ever going to play basketball." And those kind of things. When you hear that from your father, then my father didn't say a whole lot, but when he said something, he really meant it. It just means a lot that when certain things that you're told, and that's like, for instance, the guys that I grew up with in and around Indianapolis, and other than my parents, they would tell you about certain things about guys. For instance, I'll never forget this. As long as I live, one guy said, "If you're ever in a fight on the court, either get real close where you can grab around the neck and hold on, or get away from him so he can't hit you." So I never forgot that. You either get real close.
So you can't haul up and really lay one on you.
If anything happens, grab around the neck and hold on. Don't let go. And I never forgot that.
And he probably had to use it a few times.
Well, you learn. See, in basketball, it's not different than it is today. There were a lot of guys who would hit you, punch you, and the fine was only $50. So you learn. I mean, I tell you, the things you learn when you play through your experiences. It's wonderful education for you, because you learn the guys who punch and you stayed away. When you didn't get in arm lengths, punching lengths, you got away from them. I mean, and here again, I'd always felt that from the guys I knew, they said, "Listen, always watch the silent guys." He said,
that's true today.
He said, "Listen, the ones that are making all the noise and random," he said, "watch out for the guys that don't say anything." So I followed that throughout my career, and it worked pretty good.
And it's not a bad lesson today, even in the business world.